The mountain had been trembling for days, not violently, just enough to rattle wine jugs on stone shelves. Pompeii's residents had felt earthquakes before. 17 years earlier, one cracked half the city. They rebuilt. They stayed. The mountain was just the mountain. That morning, August 24th, 79 AD, the bakeries fired up before dawn. As always, 33 bakeries in a city of maybe 11,000 people. Bread was industrial here. The mills were already turning, donkeys circling their grindstones in the gray pre-light. Fishermen had already gone out. The harbor at nearby Stabiae was calm. Garum, the fermented fish sauce Romans put on nearly everything, was being processed in open vats. The smell hit you before you entered the city. Visitors noted it. Locals stopped noticing street vendors were setting up near the forum. Election slogans still painted on walls from spring. Some of those walls endorsed men who were already dead. Nobody had painted over them. The public fountains were running. Pompeii had 42 street fountains fed by an aqueduct from the hills. Water pressure that morning, normal. Which matters because it won't stay that way. Around midday, the shaking changed. Not a slow rumble, a sharp, vertical jolt that knocked things off shelves across the city. Then, just after noon, the mountain opened. Vesuvius didn't erupt the way most people picture it. A slow lava flow creeping downhill. The initial blast punched a column of superheated gas and ash 20 miles into the sky. 20 miles. That's higher than most commercial aircraft fly today. The column looked like a pine tree. Pliny the Younger described it from across the bay. He was 17, watching from Misenum, about 19 miles away. He picked up a stylus and started writing. That account, written years later to Tacitus, is almost everything we have. One teenager's memory. Back in Pompeii, the first thing people saw was the sky going wrong. The column blocked the sun. It was noon and it was getting dark. Ash started falling, light at first. The texture of gray snow, but warm. People covered their heads with pillows. That detail comes from Pliny. People actually did this. It sounds almost gentle. It was not gentle. The column was already destabilizing. Here's the mechanism most people miss. The eruption didn't kill Pompeii with lava. It killed it with a series of pyroclastic surges, superheated avalanches of gas and rock. The first hours were survivable for people who moved. Many didn't move. Some were waiting for the ash to stop. Some were guarding their money. Excavators found a man in the House of the Golden Bracelet clutching a bag of coins. He had 40 silver coins, gold jewelry, and a key. He was going somewhere. He never left. The roads out of Pompeii were two, the Herculaneum Gate heading northwest, and the Stabian Gate south. Both were passable in the first hours. Carts and people were moving. We know this because archaeologists found cart ruts in the ash layers, wheels still turning, people leaving. But the ash was also accumulating on rooftops. Roman roofs were not built for this load. Roughly 10 centimeters per hour was falling in the early phase. By evening, a meter deep. Roof collapses started killing people indoors before any surge reached the city. The people who went inside to wait were often the ones who didn't survive. The people who left early, Pliny's uncle included, sailing toward the disaster, had different fates. Pliny the Elder commanded a fleet. He sailed toward Pompeii to help and to observe. He died on the beach at Stabiae. Not from the surge, probably cardiac, overcome by fumes and ash. His last recorded action was lying down on a sailcloth, calling for water, refusing to panic visibly. Calm in the wrong direction. That's a very Roman way to die. By nightfall, Pompeii's streets were knee-deep in pumice. Moving was exhausting and slow. The ones still inside were now trapped not by walls, but by the weight of the world outside the door. Just after midnight, the column began to collapse. When a 20-mile ash column runs out of upward energy, it falls back on itself. What comes down is not ash anymore. It's a current of gas, rock, and heat moving at highway speed. The first surge, pyroclastic flow number 1, hit Herculaneum, northwest of Pompeii. First, Herculaneum was smaller, closer to the mountain. It was gone in minutes, completely buried. Pompeii got the later surges. That gap of hours was the difference between escape and death. But by 1 a.m., most people still in Pompeii had already lost the ability to make that choice. The pumice was now chest-high in some streets. The gates were effectively sealed by debris. The Herculaneum Gate, the main northwest exit, was buried past the arch by then. People found near that gate weren't running toward it. They were already down when the surge hit. The surge itself, when it finally reached Pompeii around 6 to 8 a.m., was roughly 300 degrees Celsius. Not hot enough to incinerate, hot enough to kill instantly. The distinction matters for what we find. Bodies didn't burn away. They baked in place, coated in fine ash that hardened around them. Centuries later, Giuseppe Fiorelli figured out that the voids in the ash were shaped exactly like bodies. In 1863, he injected plaster into those voids. The shapes that emerged were people frozen mid-motion, a woman shielding her face, a dog still chained, arched backward, a man covering his mouth with cloth. These are not statues, these are the actual empty spaces left by human beings. The chain on that dog is one of the details that stays with you. Somebody forgot to unchain it, or couldn't, or left too fast, or decided the dog wasn't the priority. We don't know which. Roughly 2,000 bodies have been found in Pompeii so far. The city likely held 11,000 people. That means most people got out. That fact rarely makes the documentaries. The majority of Pompeii's population survived because they left in the first few hours. The ones who died were, broadly, the ones who waited, the ones who were trapped, the ones who went back. One family was found near the Nucerian Gate, the southern exit, almost out. A man, a woman, 2 children. The children were ahead. The adults had fallen behind. The surge caught them within meters of the city wall. Meters. The gladiators' barracks yielded 63 skeletons, most in one room. They had no good option. Gladiators were not free men. They couldn't just walk out of the city unsupervised during a disaster. Their legal and social constraints, the very system that governed their lives, became a death trap. That's the part of Pompeii that doesn't fit the frozen-in-time postcard version. The city wasn't just preserved. It was sorted by wealth, mobility, obligation, and luck. Wealthy families with country estates outside the city had somewhere to go. Many did go. Slaves had no independent mobility. Their survival depended entirely on what their owners decided. The fuller's workshop, a laundry that used urine for cleaning, was still operating that morning. The workers there were likely low status, possibly enslaved. None of them left before the ash got deep. Now, here's the piece of history most people get wrong about Pompeii. They think the city was a secret, lost and forgotten, until rediscovered in the 1700s. But locals knew the ruins were there. Farmers had been digging up walls and statues for centuries. The formal excavation in 1748, under King Charles III of Naples, was the beginning of archaeology, not discovery, and those early excavations were brutal. Workers pulled out valuables and discarded bones. The plaster cast technique came nearly a century later. Before Fiorelli, the bodies were just cleared away. We lost an unknown number of those voids before anyone thought to preserve them. What Pompeii actually gives us, when we're honest about it, is a partial picture, biased towards stone buildings, wealthy households, objects that survived heat and pressure, the wooden furniture, the cloth, the food in bowls, mostly gone or degraded. What looks like a complete Roman city is actually the skeleton of one, filled in with educated inference. Historians are still debating the exact date. Some inscriptions suggest the eruption may have been in October. The food found in storage, pomegranates, chestnuts, autumn fruits, supports a later date than August. The August 24th date comes from Pliny's letter, but manuscripts had copying errors over centuries, so even the date on every documentary might be slightly wrong, probably by a few weeks. What isn't debated? The speed, the sequence, the social sorting, and the final, decisive surge. The mountain is still there. It last erupted in 1944. Naples sits 9 miles from the summit today. 3 million people live in what volcanologists call the red zone. Evacuation plans exist. Whether those plans would work under a full Vesuvian eruption, historians and scientists both go quiet. Pompeii isn't ancient history sealed under glass. It's a live question with a modern address. If you'd been there that morning, smelling the garum, watching the column rise, what would you have done? Most people, given honest constraints, would probably have waited too long. That's not weakness. It's how humans process unprecedented events. We look for the familiar pattern first. The lesson isn't always run. It's that the first hours of a crisis contain options the later hours don't. Pay attention to what the moment is actually showing you, not what you expect it to show. If this kind of ground-level history interests you, there's more where this came from. Pompeii keeps giving. Every excavation season turns up something that rewrites a small part of the story.